Everybody, this is Dream, and we have a nice little three-game slate for the main slate. And so it's a little bit different than FanDuel today. FanDuel's main slate is the night slate, and on DraftKings they have the main slate in the morning, in the 1 p.m. slate. So there's three games: Washington versus St. Louis, Cincinnati versus Chicago, and San Francisco versus Milwaukee. So overall, this slate is very limited. Um, Obviously, from a pitching perspective, Corbin Burns is probably the best overall pitcher available, and he's got the best matchup against San Francisco. He's been really good against San Francisco in 2 games, averaging 32 fantasy points a game. He hasn't been that good lately, though. Like, he's given up a lot of runs the last 4 or 5 games, and so we do need to be a little bit aware of that, but he's still in the best position on the slate. Overall, I think he, isn't ideal, but again, there's nobody that's super ideal on this particular slate. Adam Wainwright is probably the second best option, but he's kind of in the same situation where he's not been particularly great every game. He's had some upside games, but he's had some really bad ones as well. You can see the earned runs given up. But again, he's probably the second best pitcher available. Not really going to be a fan of, anybody going against Milwaukee or St. Louis. And this Chicago-Cincinnati game is going to probably be a pretty high-scoring game. So I would say you try to work these two top guys in, and if you really have to stretch it, then you could potentially go to Jacob Junis, just because he's not going to pitch all that much, but he could still get you some points in a few innings. Or you could even just dip down and take Alexander, who's going to be the starter, who's only going to play an inning or two to start the game, so he might be able to get you 10 or so points if he can get some strikeouts. But it's very unlikely. I feel like you can't hardly choose anybody else besides Burns and Wainwright. And as you can see, we're still going to have almost $4,000 a player available. It's a very strange slate just because there's not much available here. At catcher, we're going to be very limited at this position. There's really only, I guess, 3 people to choose from. That, if depending on who starts, obviously, because sometimes there's not going to be the starter. Whichever catcher starts for Milwaukee between Navarez and Caratani is going to be probably be the most ideal catcher. Now, neither one of them are hitting particularly well, but they have the most upside. Keibler Ruiz is also somebody that you can consider. He has had some big games lately, but he's going to have a tougher matchup against Wainwright. And that's pretty much it at this position. I took a look at Young Gomes and Kiddensner, and I just really couldn't see much point in even looking at them or using them in any capacity. At first base, we really don't have a ton here either. So one of the best picks, though, is Spencer Steer. He's just a young guy that's only played in 5 games, but if you look at his 5 games, he's had a home run. He had really good batting in the minors as well. So I feel like just because of his price and everything else, he's almost a must play. But the only exception is if you want to try to fit Paul Goldschmidt in, because of the situation that he's in. He's in a plus matchup against Washington. And obviously his price is very expensive, though. Talese, he does look pretty good for today, but he hasn't been hitting all that great, and his price has come way up. If Kirsten Herrera plays, then he would be somebody to consider, but it doesn't look like he's going to play. And if Pujols starts, and you want to try to take a chance that he's going to hit a home run, then you could do that as well. At second base, we don't have a ton here either. But we do have some options. So we have Jonathan India at Cincinnati. This game is going to be high scoring, so I'm definitely interested in looking at some of the Cincinnati players. He's been hitting the ball pretty well as of late, averaging 8.2 last 10 games. He's not a gigantic home run threat, but he can hit them, and he's definitely in a situation where it's possible. Colton Wong is somebody that's day to day, so I'm avoiding him, even though he does project pretty decently. And then Tommy Edman is the other guy that I would consider for St. Louis. He's just absolutely murdering the ball lately. Only his price is super expensive, so you might have to pay down for a pitcher if you want to, try to get him in there. But he's been playing really good. And then you could also go with Luis Urias if he starts. It's hard to know which of these Milwaukee Brewers are going to start, but he's been hitting the ball pretty well, and 318 the last 10 games. So all those guys have potential in this particular matchup. At third base, I don't have a ton here either, but we have a couple guys that we can choose from. So overall, it's going to be Christopher Morel for the Chicago Cubs. He hasn't been hit the ball very well in the last 10 games, but he still has home run potential, and he's still a pretty good hitter overall. He's just been in a little bit of a thing, but he's actually gotten a hit in 3 straight games, so he looks like he might be coming out of his slump. And if he can continue that, then this is a good matchup for him against some bad pitching. Another guy that I like okay here is Kyle Farmer. He's been hitting the ball pretty well as of late. He averaging 7.5 points per game. He's also got cross potential with shortstop, so that's a nice advantage. And who else was it? Oh, yeah. Luis Urias, again. If he does start, then he's somebody that you could potentially utilize at this position as well. Just batting 318 overall. So, not a great slate. Arenado is he's just way too expensive to be worth throwing in here. He has a good matchup, and he's hitting the ball okay lately, but it's just the least ideal of the expensive players on this particular slate. At shortstop, so we basically have Kyle Farmer again. We have Tommy Edman again, who I mentioned, and then we have Willy Adames, but his price is so high. His production has not met that price, and so they're not in Colorado anymore. They're back in Milwaukee, which again, you can still hit home runs there, but it's not like Colorado where it was worth the price up. And his price went up now. That's a little surprising. If you do need a cheap option, Horner has actually been pretty good lately at 8.6, and so has Brandon Crawford, who is he always is underpriced, and I say it a lot, but it's like he seems to be in positions where he's going to score some decent amount of points. However, his matchup is very ugly today, so you do have to be aware of that because he's going against Burns. So that's pretty much what I have at shortstop. And then in outfield, we have a couple guys from the Cincinnati Reds. Let's see if we can find them. So TJ Friedl, he's been just murdering the ball. 432 last 10 games, 4 home runs as well, and 2 triples and doubles in those games. He's probably a must-play, especially at his price point. And then also Jake Fraley, who is a home run threat every time he comes up to bat. He had a home run yesterday, was super nice, and I expect him to have a potential chance again. That game is super juicy. Seiyu Suzuki is a guy that we should also take a look at as an option. Now his price has come up a lot, but he's still in play in this matchup. And then Ian Happ, my goodness, this guy when he's at the top of my projections again, and he was the other day against Cincinnati when he hit a home run and got 16 fantasy points. I like him in this matchup, and so I definitely think I'm going to try to figure out how to roster him. Corey Dickerson is a guy that you could consider if I can find him. Corey, if he plays for St. Louis, he's been hitting pretty well at 333 last 10, and then also Franmil Reyes for Chicago Cubs. There he is. He has been hitting the ball lately really good, and he's a nice little plus matchup here. 8.3 last 10 with 2 home runs. Definitely got to like what he's been doing. There's actually quite a few good options at this position, but some of the guys, they're just so overpriced now that it really makes it difficult. And if we look at the hitters and just look at the highest priced guys, like Tyler O'Neill's 58, Jock Peterson's 5,500, Renfroe 53, Menendez is 51, Yelich is 4,900. It's really difficult. And McCutchen, he's 4,200, but aside from a couple of good games, he's not been particularly great. He's had 2 good games in a row, but it helps that he was in Colorado. And before that, he hadn't broken 10 fantasy points for about 3 weeks. So I'm steering clear of him in this match, even though it's a decent matchup for him. You're just going to find a lot of value at shortstop or at outfield, so it's definitely worth just paying down for some guys so that you can fill in the other positions that are much more weak. So that's pretty much what I have for this small little slate. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you to the Patreons people for joining. And let me get my list real quick so I can shout those guys out. Why is this not working? No, I can't get it to work. But anyhow, appreciate you guys, and thank you. I'll try to do a night slate for DraftKings sometime during the day tomorrow as well, just for that slate, since there's two small slates that are both 3 games. So see you in the next video, and have a nice day, guys.